Hello friends, today we're going to do a lesson on handwriting, and I printed out some house paper for you, and you might remember this paper in primary. And in your new class in kindergarten, if you're a 5-year-old, you'll be going to kindergarten and you will be using paper that has these lines on it. You'll see these dotted lines and then the solid line, and you're going to put your letters in between those lines. But first thing I want to do is talk about the house paper. If you notice, this one is big. This is a big house. And then this is a little house. The big house is for uppercase letters, and the small house is for lowercase letters. So if you're going to kindergarten, you're likely going to have paper that's like this, but it will not have the houses on it. But this will help you to practice before you go to kindergarten, or if you're a new writer, this will help you to figure out where your letters go. So let's talk about the house first. This top part of the house where the roof is, this is called the attic. And sometimes when we write letters, we might go all the way up into the attic to write a letter. And then this part of the house right here, we're going to call that the living room. In here is the living room. This is the attic, and this is the living room. This right here is the ceiling of the living room. So if you're in your own living room, your feet are on the floor, and up at the top is your ceiling. And that's just what this is like. This down here is the basement. And you can tell because it's got steps that go down into the basement. And sometimes when you write a letter, the tail of your letter will go into the basement. So that's the uppercase letters. This is the lowercase. It's the same thing. We'll go over it one more time. This is the attic, where the top of your letter might go. This is the living room, where most of your lowercase letters are going to go right in here. Especially with writing with cursive letters, we always start right here on this line, which is the floor of the living room. This we're going to call the basement, and that's where the tail of our letters go. So that's house paper, and I'm going to send some to your mom or dad, and you'll have it at your house and you can use it to practice. So the first letter that we're going to work on today is the sound that makes k. You remember that sound. We always start with that letter because it helps us to not only write k, but we also get to write the other letters with it. Once you know how to write k, you can write a and ah and d. You can write a lot of letters just by knowing the k. So we're going to start with that. And if you're new to handwriting in primary, then we start with cursive letters. Cursive letters are really fun to write. And once you know how to write them, you remember forever how to write them. And what's nice about cursive is it all kind of flows together. And you leave your pencil on the paper the whole time you're writing a word. So your hand does not come off the paper. It stays on the paper until you get to the next word, and then you leave a space, and then you write your next word. So it's a nice flow from left to right. Just like when you're reading, we read from left to right. So it gets our brain working in that direction. So cursive writing is great for a lot of good reasons. So we start with cursive in primary. So I'm going to start with the k sound, and I'm going to put it in the house just to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to put it right inside the living room. Again, we always start on this line right here. That's the floor of the living room. And here we go. We go up to the ceiling, come back down to the floor, and then we stop to write the sound k. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to start again on the floor of the living room, up to the ceiling. We come around, come back down all the way to the floor, and stop to write k. Now it's going to take you some time to learn how to write like that. I've been writing a long time, so when you practice a long time, you get good at it. But sometimes your letters might be bigger or smaller, but our goal is to get it right in between this line. So that's going to take a little bit of work. You're just going to have to practice. At first, your letters are going to be bigger, or they might even be smaller, and that's okay. You just have to practice. So again, I'm going to write it again. I'm going to start on the floor of the living room, go up to the ceiling, come back down to the floor, and stop for k. And I'm going to do it again. Remember that we practice many, many times. And like I said, yours is probably not going to look like this at first. And that's okay. That's how you get good at it. When I first started writing, mine didn't look right either. So just practice and you'll be surprised how one day it doesn't look right and then all of a sudden it does. One thing you must remember is to keep your marker or your pencil on the paper the whole time. You're not going to do this and then this and then this. You're going to do it all at once, keeping your marker, your pencil on the paper the whole time. Okay, so that's the k sound. Okay, and then we're going to do another one. And this one is going to be a little bit easy because we started with k. And when we go to do our next letter, it'll be easy because we already learned how to do k. Now, I'm going to hope that you are going to practice k many, many, many times. Like you might even practice it for a long time and then you say, Mommy, I want to take a break, or Daddy, I want to take a break. And then you come back to it another day and you see if you got better at writing k. But you want to write k many, many, many times. You might even set the timer for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes of writing k. Just write it over and over again many, many times. And that way you're going to get super good at it before you even go on to the next letter. So if you want to stop the video now and go practice k, you could do it. And then come back for this next part of this lesson. Okay, so I'm going to guess that this is another day for you, and you're now going to practice a different letter. And again, we'll remember that we talk about the attic of the house. This is for lowercase, and that's what we're working on. This is the attic. This is the living room. Whoops, my paper moved a little bit. The living room, and this is the line of the floor of the living room, and that's where we're going to work today. And then this is the basement. You can tell because it has stairs. Okay? So we're going to start with k. Oh, excuse me, I already did k. Now we're going to do ah. Do you remember ah? For olive and October and octagon. K we just did was for Caroline and cucumber and cool and Catherine and Caroline. But now we're going to do ah for October and olive. And I'm going to do it in the house to begin with. Remember, we always start on this line when we're writing cursive. So we're going to go on the line. That's the floor of the living room. We're going up to the ceiling, come around a little bit, and then come all the way back, all the way around to the floor again, and come up to the ceiling. And you can put a little fancy circle on the top, a little tail on the top. Start on the floor of the living room, up to the ceiling, go around a little bit, down to the floor, up and around for ah. And this is just a starting point. I went a little bit fancy over there, but you don't really need to. This is just a starting point for you to go up and around, come back. Almost looks like ka, but you're going to close it and make ah. Okay, and you can use your finger to make ah. Start on the floor of the living room, go around to the ceiling, come down to the floor of the living room, and around. up to the ceiling, down to the floor, up to the ceiling, and make ah. Great. Practice ah many, many, many times before you move on to any other letters, okay? We're going to do one more today, but I really want you to practice k first and get really good at it. Then you can add ah. Oops. And then we're going to do one more. But you might want to stop the video so that you can practice ah really, really well before you move on to anything else. Okay? So now we're going to do one more letter. We've done ka. We've done ah. Oops. There we go. And now we're going to do one more. This one, we did ka, we did ah, and now we're going to do ah. Do you remember that sign for ah? Okay, again, this is the attic, where some of our letters go up to the top of that house to the attic. All the letters we're doing today are going to be inside the living room. Don't forget that this is the ceiling of the living room where the dotted line is. This is the floor of the living room. This is the basement. You can tell because there's steps. And we're going to put all of our lowercase letters right here. And we're going to always start on this solid line right here. So we did k, we did ah, and now we're going to do ah. I'm going to do it inside the house, up to the ceiling. Whoops, start that again. Come around. It's almost like you're making ka, and then you're going to go straight up to the ceiling and back down. Okay, we're going to do it inside the living room space right there. Starting on the floor, all the way up to the ceiling, come around, back down to the floor, straight up, and down to make A. Again, this is just a starting point right here. We're going up and around to the ceiling, back down to the floor, come around, straight up, and down to make ah. Remember, very important that you keep your marker or your pencil on the paper the whole time till you're finished with ah. So when you get down here is where you lift up your marker or your pencil. So we're not doing this, and then this, and then this, and then this. I see a lot of people do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that we do it all together, and then we pick up our marker or our pencil off the paper. I do better when I have these lines. I shouldn't probably leave that space right there. But here we go. We're going to do it on the line, and that will help me to write it correctly. Come up to the ceiling, come around a little bit, come back down around to the floor, straight up and down. All right. And that, boys and girls, is our house paper lesson with lowercase letters k, ah, and ah. And we will do more, but these are the first three. So if you're just starting to write, these are great letters to start with. If you're already writing, this would be really good practice for you. All right, I will see you soon.